So it is such an honor for me to bring to all of you. Who's been looking forward to this session since I told you we'd be doing this? Yeah. So look, last October, I got an email a week before the last time we did an in-person week-long exchange gathering. And I got an email from a gentleman who I'd never met. His name was Dr. Dan Diamond. And Dr. Dan Diamond said, "Hey, John, I know your training starts in 3 days, but I have a friend also named Dr. Dan, Dr. Danny Friedland. And he's telling me about this guy, Danny Friedland." And so I go to our team and I did a little research. I learned about his work. And if you learn anything about Danny, you know that he's had kind of two careers. He wrote one of the first textbooks on evidence-based medicine, but then he had this transformational elevation where he decided to bring his understanding of the mind and of mindfulness to help leaders to become conscious leaders. And I'm looking at this thinking, this sounds like a great guy to have to our training. So he shows up, 3 days before the training, shows up last October. And within just a couple hours, even minutes of that training starting, I knew there was something really special for our community and even for me just to have met this individual. And since then, he's become an incredible teacher to our inner circle, an incredible guide for our whole community, and a dear, dear friend personally, whose work has already completely changed the trajectory of my world, and it's tilted what's possible for us at Exchange. Danny, I'm really glad that you're here today, and glad to have this interview dialogue opportunity to be with you, buddy.
John, I love you, my brother, and I just feel so incredibly blessed to be with you here, with you all now, and I'm just ready for whatever unfolds.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love you too.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a couple things that I would love for you to share with everybody. And I know one of the things we want to share is, well, page 16, there's some blanks to fill in. So any Germans in the room will be angry if we don't fill in those blanks. We're done. So I do want everybody to be introduced, because Danny, I'm pretty sure somewhere between 60 and 75% of this group has yet to be introduced to some of the core concepts that you teach. So I am going to ask you to share kind of some of the essence of what you teach. I do want to have you share the role that your work plays in the conscious capitalism movement. By show of hands, how many of you are familiar with the movement or the mission or the concept of conscious capitalism? Okay, great. If you're not familiar, it's definitely worth looking into. And then Danny, and then of course, anything else that you want to share. I also want to make sure that I show everybody and that you share maybe any ways, whether it's significant and dramatic or even practical and tactical, that Exchange has influenced your work, because I know that's become the case. So we've got a list there of things to hit. But I actually, before we get to the list, I want to start in the present. I want to start in this moment. And I want to acknowledge that you texted me sometime last week. I think it was Thursday night. And you said, "John, we need to talk." And you and I had been designing this upcoming deep dive that you're going to lead for our community. It's a 2.5-day immersion of your work, and our community gets the gift of an experience that if a company wanted to bring you in to do that, it would be a massive investment. And so we had already been working on that, and you reached out to me last week and you said, "John, I have news." And so Danny, I just want to invite you, however you'd like, to share with everybody what's present for you that's happened in the last week, and how are you feeling right now as of this moment?
Well, right now I'm feeling incredibly blessed. I'm just feeling so blessed. So what's emerging, I have learned so much in Exchange. As I wrote to you this morning, Exchange has been the greatest life learning investment that I've ever made. And there are a series of questions. And some of the questions, for example, is, asking what is your superpower? think of a time in your life where you've had a massive, massive challenge and you've come through stronger as a result. And from that, identifying, what are your strengths? So, looking back through the lens, my superpower is making meaning of suffering. My superpower is making meaning of suffering. And actually, my early career, when I went to medical school, I fell apart. I'm an immigrant from South Africa, and I arrived over here, kind of full of bravado and driven by achievement, and was accepted to UCSF. And in my second year, I just fell apart. I went into for the first part, it went into a clinical depression, stress, anxiety, and self-doubt. And 6 months in, I saw a therapist, and said to me, "Sounds to me like you've had your lid flipped. Sounds to me like you've had your lid flipped." And I know what he means by the neuroscience right now. I wasn't regulating very well, but what I saw was a physical lid, and below the lid was my stress and self-doubt. And, I just really appreciate the sharing about, just we all have inadequacies, but I'd managed to bury that with achievement. And the moment I saw this image and the lid was flipped, I saw just how naked my stress and self-doubt was on the surface. And that was kind of a branch point in my life, which is I realized I could go back to flipping the lid over with a failed experiment, or I could learn how to embrace stress, uncertainty, and self-doubt and focus on what was really purposeful and meaningful in life. And I took that path, and that changed my life. That was the core of my purpose journey. And so on that journey, I very quickly I learned that I wasn't the only person falling apart in medical school, because I said I feel like such a loser. I'm the only one falling apart with this. And they said, "Well, don't you know that more than half your class is in counseling right now?" So, and this is classic, high functioning organizations and individuals, we suffer in silence. So I said, that's crazy. Somebody needs to change the culture. So actually, my first experience of conscious leadership, before I even met the conscious capitalism movement, was I actually had this just intuition that somebody needs to change the culture. And why not me? And so I founded the UCSF Medical Student Network. I created 25 families, led by the fourth year students, and then there were third years, second years, and first years. And then I actually launched the movement, at a time when, emotional well-being in medical school was very touchy-feely. It wasn't very well received. And I spoke to the school about the importance of modeling vulnerability so we can connect more fully with our own suffering. And by extension, the gift of actually self-compassion, the ultimate gift of self-compassion, is so that we can be more compassionate with others. We claim compassion for ourselves so we can give it away to others in abundance. And that's the healing journey. And I really felt like healthcare is strained of compassion. And I wanted to dedicate a big part of my teaching to bringing literally health.care back into the healthcare system. And so that was one of the most nourishing things I ever did. And then I went through an internal medicine residency. And then I was asked to become the first teaching fellow at UCSF. They'd never had a teaching fellowship before. And they said, "Well, what do you want to teach?" And I said, "Well, I want to continue working leadership and resiliency and compassionate delivery of healthcare." And my mentor said, no, that's not going to work. You're going to have to do something more academic than that. So my second choice was, there was a field emerging of evidence-based medicine, which has evolved to become the standard of care by which all doctors healthcare providers make science-based decisions. And so I decided, this is back in 1995, I decided I was going to train the faculty at UCSF on how to practice evidence-based medicine, and then ended up authoring one of the first textbooks in the United States on evidence-based medicine, and spent the next decade of my life training tens of thousands of healthcare providers in every state in the country on how to practice, science-based decision-making. And then about a decade ago, I went through another depression because for me, that was the mind of medicine, and I was missing the heart. I was missing the heart of healthcare and the purpose of my life. And so I had to find my way back. But the good thing was I had a science-based lens. I had a science-based lens to do this. And I had a number of, extraordinary unfoldings, one of which I was starting to actually come back and actually build, what's become my program in Leading Well from Within. I was beginning to actually design and deliver these programs. And then I had the opportunity to actually encounter the conscious capitalism movement. And with these very fledgling programs, I did a program for the co-chair of the Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with conscious capitalism is a big international movement. And it's a movement, and think about the cultures that I mentioned. So it's a movement that's either founded or engaged by companies like Starbucks, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Best Buy, Patagonia, Southwest Airlines. So you get the idea. So it's a big international movement, and their mission statement is glorious. And when I share with you the mission statement, you'll see kind of how it overlaps with XCHANGE. Because the mission statement is, we exist to elevate humanity. We exist to elevate humanity. And they have 4 tenets. And again, this is just uncanny, how it overlaps with XCHANGE, because the first tenet of conscious capitalism is higher purpose. Higher purpose drives. And then the second tenet is what's called stakeholder orientation. And in the language of XCHANGE, it's the wholeness of the community. Everybody needs to win in the ecosystem for an ecosystem to thrive. And then third tenet is about conscious leadership that results in the fourth tenet, which is conscious culture and a thriving environment. And there's science around this because John Mackey, CEO of Whole Foods, co-founded the organization with Raj Sisodia. Raj Sisodia wrote a book. I love the title of this book, just if you can feel into the title, Firms of Endearment. Firms of Endearment. Tracked 28 companies over a 15-year period, and what he discovered was that these companies outperformed the market by 10 to 1. Like, how is that possible? How is that possible? So I became intensely fascinated by the science and practice of conscious leadership. I wanted to really understand how this works. And then I was, blessed in 2012 and then 2013 to be invited to actually speak on conscious leadership at the CEO Summit. Where before I even knew what conscious leadership really was. So I learned far more than I was probably learning more than anybody in the room as I was convening folks in this experience. And I've been invested in conscious capitalism ever since. I've had a deep immersion in it. I've been the founding chair of the San Diego chapter. And I also am blessed to, it's no secret because it's on my website, but I coach the CEO of Conscious Capitalism on conscious leadership. So I feel blessed to really have a front row seat on this emergence in the movement. The other arc of the story, the other piece of this, in 2013 as well, I was asked to become the founding chair of the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine. And this is the umbrella organization for integrative health. And coming out of evidence-based medicine, you know, I was speaking about evidence-based medicine being a paradigm shift. And when I got into it, and that paradigm shift was based on maintaining absence of disease. It's a deficit gap. You know, we have the conventional medicine solves for a deficit gap. But when I entered this world of integrative holistic medicine, I entered into the world of an abundance gap. Because integrative holistic medicine asks the question, how do we create health? And I wanted to be a part of that. Now, so I was really blessed to be a part of that. But I also took on the work because it's one thing to teach on leadership and train on leadership. The opportunity for me to be the founding chair, I was so stretched on my journey. But the confluence, what I've written here is looking at the intersect. What does conscious capitalism have to teach healthcare systems about how to cultivate healing environments? And by the same token, what are the lessons from integrative holistic care that can inform business? So right now I have a very active consultancy in doing coaching and workshops in both healthcare. I work with healthcare systems and businesses of all sizes. So I want to just, and that was dialed in, but I just want to say, I'll create a placeholder here to say that I've been teaching programs that have been very dialed in, but when I entered the Exchange community a year ago, I would have said that I was a classic thought leader and expert, talking head speaker, but now I'm a world-class facilitator, and that's a world of difference. I no longer present, I choreograph extraordinary conversations. And that's been the gift. That's been a life-giving gift of Exchange. It's changed my life. So, I'm giving you an arc where, my life's work is to advance, to understand how conscious leadership can elevate all of us in the world so that we can serve at higher levels for others. And then just, I'm back to making meaning of suffering. So on Thursday, I had something happen to me that had never happened to me before. I was on a coaching call with a client and I couldn't get my words out. I had severe word block. And I had to end the call early. And I called my friend Dan. I said, I think I've got something happening inside of me. And he says, you've got to go to the ER. And so I went into Scripps and I got a head MRI. And on Thursday morning, I was on one side of a door where I had the infinite possibility of life. And by that evening, I was diagnosed with brain cancer. So I'm on the other side of the door now. And as you can imagine, I had to share with my family. They were devastated by the news. My son had just the most extraordinary grief reaction, my oldest son. I've got two boys, my wife Sue, and I have Zach's 21 and Dylan's 16. And Zach and I had also written a book together. He spoke at Conscious Capitalism. So we are just like such a tight family. He came in and he just tore his shirt off his body. and he collapsed. Inconsolable for 30 minutes. And then it's COVID, so they transitioned me to the floor because they were going to set me up for a workup to get a biopsy, a brain biopsy the next day. And, the question, I've got multiple lesions in my left lobe. So the question is, do I have brain metastases or do I have a multifocal primary brain cancer, which could be a glioblastoma, neither of which is, so I went to the floor that night and only slept 1 hour. But because I've been through Exchange and because I've been doing this work and because I understand the choreography of questions, it's now a lived experience. I've been doing this work long enough where Exchange has become a lived experience for me. It has changed my life. And so initially in my spikes of fear, I pivoted very quickly to the question of purpose. And I asked, what matters most now? What matters most now? And I got some glorious answers come back. This is another one of the principles in Exchange, which is, in crisis, asking the right questions assembles glorious order. And this was an assembly of just such beauty, just the glorious order that comes out of, and I think crises are a gift. They're a gift if we know how to use them well. Because the answers I got in that question, what matters most now, the answers that flowed is make every moment count. Make every moment count. And then that answer led to another question. How? So it's almost like you ask questions, you get answers, those lead to new questions, and you follow the trail. And there's an altitude of those questions. And so that was, if you think about the altitude of that question of what matters most now, that's a high altitude question that's going to structure everything below it. And the answer that flowed from that was, well, what matters most now is being intensely alive in loving relationships, being highly intentional being very intentional that every interaction is a touch point. It's a touch point of receiving and giving love, receiving others with empathy and understanding and giving with authenticity and care. And I'm very intentional. And this, let me just say, I'm very mindful. I'm in this moment with each one of you. This moment counts for me. This moment. I so appreciate being here with each of you because this is a moment that counts. So I can be in your presence of receiving and giving love with you. And then the next part that, emerged for me was understanding that with the possibility of shortened time, wanting to leave a legacy with my work, And that actually relates to the understanding about it's about giving and receiving love. So my heart has just cracked open. My heart is cracked from those answers that I have assembled, in large part from, kind of the foundation that I have in Exchange, this ability that I have to live into life more fully. Exchange is life-giving. Exchange is intensely life-giving. What's emerged in this time is that I have never experienced a time in my life where I felt this alive. My senses are just, John talks about senses. I sent a video out to the inner circle. I can't sleep, and it's not from nerves. I can't sleep. It's from excitement. I have to get up in the morning. I want to watch the sunrise. I want to go into my garden and watch the birds dance around the bird feeder. I'm bugging my wife. You know, are we ready to get up? Because let's go. It's like I just am in the savoring of life. I'm a surfer, and I drove by the beach the other day, and I cried because I saw the textures in the water like I'd never seen before. So my senses are intensely alive. And then what I so appreciate being here this morning with you, because when the question, John, when you asked the question, what needs to die, what's dying inside of you and what's being born inside of you, I woke up this morning. It further crystallized because I had a certain sense of this. I am feeling such presence in being held by the field, by being held by the field of collective consciousness. I know, Philip, I'm so happy to see you here, Philip, because we had this extraordinary talk about synchronicity. I mean, you're a gift to the community, and there are the synchronicities that are emerging right now. I mean, I am in an abundance of synchronicity. It's all coming from the field. It's flowing through, and I am in awe. And what I'm learning is just how loving and extraordinary the field is. So I'm no longer scared of making my transition. I actually almost welcome whatever that transition may be. I'm optimistic about being able to merge into this loving, energetic field. It's vast. So what's dying in me right now is actually my fear of death itself. That's what's dying in me as I'm going through this. So I am feeling so blessed by this journey. I feel like it is a blessed journey. And I don't know, and well, I'll tell you another anecdote. It's very personal with my son because, and I'll give you just a taste of this. Is that okay that I keep going, John? Am I just riffing? I don't know.
I've got until Wednesday next week.
Okay. So Zach came to me the other day. Well, the next day after he collapsed in a heap, and he's a deep soul. And he said, Dad, I just realized why I collapsed in ruins. Because I realized whenever I have problems in my life, you're my ultimate rock of my life. That's the ultimate rock. And when I heard you tell me this, I'm not ready. I don't feel I have a rock anymore. And I don't know where. I'm not ready. I just feel I'm in a heap of ruins. And so that insight, Philip, I think you'll enjoy this. Dan Diamond, who's my brother, I just loved it, my brother Dan. I just draw so much joy out of our interaction. He had sent me, before my diagnosis, he had sent me this gorgeous book of Luke. And Luke was a physician. And I opened the packet. Zach's just shared this with me. with the rock and being in ruins. And I opened the packet with him and I said, let's flip to any page. Let's flip to any page in the book. And the page we flipped to was building a foundation. And the paragraph read, you need to learn how to dig down to find your rock. Because if you can't, when the waters come, it will wash your house away in a heap of ruins. That happened within about a half an hour after our discussion. And so what the insight was is that we were in awe, and really both of us quickly realized that there was something much larger, that this was clearly all coming from the field. This was coming all from the field. And what he realized is that his rock, building his rock solid, doesn't require my physical presence. Because whenever I transition into the field, he will always find me there. He will always find me in the field. And the lessons that I teach him as we're going on this extraordinary learning transformational journey as a family, that will leave him with the deepest intuition where it will reassemble his rock. And he has already, in 4 days, he's head up to to Los Angeles to pick up a girl that he said, Dad, I'm not waiting. I'm living my life now. And I said, you go, Zach. And I think he sent a picture. Anyway, he's like living his life to the fullest right now, not in spite of the cancer, but because of it. So I just feel so incredibly blessed to be, in this phase of the journey. And I also now understand that I've got a very precious time to actually elevate how I serve in my work. So when we had set up this deep dive for, a while ago, but I think it actually becomes even more profound, again, because of my cancer. Because what I'm actually acutely learning, another one of my superpowers is I learn so I can give. And what I'm learning now in this moment of making meaning of this challenge, I'm actually learning that the power source of conscious leadership, the power source of conscious leadership comes from when it's connected to an awakened heart. Let me repeat that. The power source of conscious leadership comes from when it's connected to an awakened heart. And that's, it would be my gift for any of you who want to come to the deep dive to be able to explore in this together. So let me pause. That was quite a riff. I thank you for you allowing me the gift to share.
John, your mic.
Your friends will tell you when your mic is on mute.
Yeah.
I'd love to invite all of you right now to drop into the chat the greatest gift that Danny brought to you today. And then we're going to transition with Danny. But I'd love to just invite that. Go right ahead. The greatest gift that Danny brought to you today. Every moment matters. Opened my heart, feeling presence and being held by the field of collective consciousness. Every moment does indeed matter. Learning so you can give. This moment matters. Giving and receiving. Making every moment count. The clarity and beauty that is becoming more revealed from his heart. Perspective. Focus on what really matters, let go of all else. I learn so I can give. By the way, can any of you guess who taught us this move? Put stuff in the chat and then read it out loud. I'll let you guess. He's right next to me. From dying comes living. Pivot quickly to purpose. The greatest gift today was your love and passion. I feel so blessed to receive this moment with you. Thank you beyond words, Dr. Danny. Make every moment count. Thank you. Raw and real storytelling that's deeply personal, which creates an open heart for all. Crisis is a gift. The power source of conscious leadership comes from when it's connected to an awakened heart. Being intensely alive in loving relationships. Build your house on a rock. Let go of the story that you know how much time you have. Just treasure it more. Intensely alive in loving relationships. I am more alive than ever. You, your heart, your love. Higher altitude questions come when you are on higher ground. I am in the field and alive now. I see you, Dr. Dan. Danny, I want everyone to know that for any of you who would like to join us for the deep dive on awakening conscious leadership, I can't find the stupid page in the book. Somebody put the dates of the deep dive in the chat box. It's December something, something, something. And
Second through the 4th. Yeah.
2nd through the 4th. You have to be a member to go to that. Half of you already are. And if you're unlimited, you're unlimited. You come to everything. And if you want to know how you sign up for this stuff, we'll talk about that later. How many of you right now are excited to go through that deep dive, by the way? We haven't even shown you. Danny, what I thought I would do. Yeah. This is the Padlet. So our inner circle has been taking notes as we've gone through a private guided journey from Danny through this deep dive. We've been going through this over a couple months, and all of you get to go through this together. You know, what's interesting is that you just look at these images and the words. This is probably the most magnetic invitation to the deep dive. This is our notepad that our inner circle has kept as we've gone through that journey together. And it probably speaks many more volumes than most of what we could tell you about what's going to happen at that deep dive. But Danny, I'd love to do this. I would love to, there's even a Ninja Turtle made it like that. I would love to ask you to help us to fill in just a question or two around the basis of your work. And thank you so much for sharing your story earlier.
Yeah.
And I've got this page in front of me. I don't actually care if we fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
I'll make sure they get filled in at some point. But you might have one image of your own to help everybody to walk away with the nucleus, the essence of what it means to be a conscious leader.
Beautiful.
So please.
Yeah. So when you look at the neuroscience of this, you know, and I'm going to be very brief, and when we get to the program, I will go into much greater depth on this. But the short of this is that the evolutionary structure of the brain, from the neuroscience perspective, there's a 3-part evolutionary structure of the brain that maps perfectly against a simplified version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: safety, love and belonging, and significance. So our brain is safety first. These are the safety circuits in the reptilian brain. This is the paleo-mammalian brain, where we give rise to our capacity for love and belonging. And this is the conscious brain, the highest The third part of the triune brain is the neocortex, and the prefrontal cortex in particular, which integrates all levels below it, which gives us the capacity for all the qualities of elevated and conscious leadership. This is the ability to relate well to others. This is the ability to make good decisions and envision purpose and significance, or mindfully and pause before we respond. So there are flows in the brain. There are flows in the brain that are dictated by a formula. And the formula is, what is the relationships of demands we're facing to our resources we have to engage? And this is liberating for people to understand, because when you understand how your brain works, you understand that you're not weak or you're not flawed, but this is just how your brain works naturally under pressure. And when the demands exceed resources, we go into a threat response around stress and self-doubt. Now, this response is designed to protect our life, put us in a state of reactivity, which works well in physical danger. But when it comes to psychological danger, when you're threatened by stress, it leads us into fighting for control or taking flight from things that leave you feeling out of control. When you're threatened by self-doubt, it takes us into a reactive place where we are fighting to prove self-worth, or we're taking flight from things that trigger self-doubt. And that can put tremendous strain on relationships. And that also aligns with a lot of the low performance leadership characteristics. Interestingly, this is what, Otto Scharmer is talking about, ecosystems. When your ego is threatened, we actually descend into a reactive state. And when you think about demands and resources, especially as we're going through COVID right now, heaping on a whole new layer of demands, most leaders are going into a reactive state because it's fragmenting resources. Interestingly, Peter Drucker actually acknowledges this. He says, even at the best of times, all organizations are a mix of friction, confusion, low performance. Then he adds, everything else requires leadership. Everything else requires leadership. Mm-hmm. And so, the question for leadership is, how do you stand in the right direction, not when times are easy, but when times are hard? How do you cultivate psychological safety? How do you create psychological safety within yourself and the community? How do you create a sense of greater love and belonging in a community so that you set a platform to doing the work of purpose, innovation, creativity, and significance? In other words, how do you optimize your internal resources and marshal external resources so we could rise to the challenge together? And this is the work of exchange. This is the work of exchange. Because we're not only in a cycle, oscillate between states of mindsets of reactivity and creativity, because we're fundamentally wired to connect. We exist in cycles of reactivity and cycles of creativity with each other. So the cycle of reactivity is a very sticky cycle. If somebody comes to you edgy without context, you're going to be triggered, because all of this, the brain's priority is not for joy or happiness first, by the way, it's safety first. So there's a cognitive bias towards safety and assuming the worst. There's a natural cognitive bias. That's why we need the skills and practices of such as mindfulness, exchange, to actually elevate ourselves, because it's a function of being able to stand in an alternative direction to give elevated possibility. So the natural cycle is fight, flight, trigger, fight, flight, trigger, fight, flight, trigger. And then we stay trapped down there getting burnt out. We stay trapped down there with others in these cycles of reactivity, trapped. But the heart of conscious leadership, literally the heart of conscious leadership, is a cycle of receiving and giving love. It's a cycle of receiving and giving love with others, receiving others with empathy, understanding, and giving with authenticity and care. And that's the power of exchange. When you do a paired interview, the choreography of the paired interview, very specifically the choreography of 1, 2, and many, puts you into a choreography of receiving and giving love, such that the end result is a natural unfolding of psychological safety, deeper connection, in which, when you come out, poetry emerges, because now you're in the stream of your genius brain, where you can actually assemble things more clearly from the field, unfettered. That's the power, and the way we choreograph those questions, the way we actually go into and out of those groups, and the way John masterfully leads the community in embodying this. What you're seeing is just, this is the neuroscience basis to understand, connect the dots, and understand the depth of the mastery you're experiencing. So it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there, but because it's not, we don't only exist in dyads, we exist in systems. Every one of us has a pyramid, and we're connected to an infinite web. This is the world of, moving from the machine, organizations being seen as a machine, as it's a vast, interconnected, living, breathing network of relationships. This is what it means when Otto Scharmer says moving from egosystems to moving to ecosystems. This is the ecosystem within which we exist. And so when you go through, all you have to do as a leader is ask yourself the question, and the reason why we're calling the program Awakening Conscious Leadership. Leadership's an act of influence. And because you're wired to connect, you inevitably have influence. So it's not about becoming a leader. It's about awakening to the influence you already have. It's about awakening to the influence you already have and asking yourself in that awareness, am I having the kind of positive influence, or am I having negative influence on my environment? And if you want to take that deeper, you can ask the simple question, am I showing up as a demand for others in my environment, or am I showing up as a resource for them? And the very next person you touch in your network, you only need to touch the first node in your network. The very next person you touch in the network they're connected to somebody else. They will do the work for you. You don't know how far your influence can travel, down to 7 generations. That's the work of ecosystems. That's the work of exchange happening at scale and transforming the system. And so I used to actually, my work, when I understood this, I had written the book, but I was doing presentations on that. I was actually sharing these concepts, and they're powerful concepts. But the transformation of me having gone through exchange was to choreograph experiences, lived experiences, where I'm now able, through the gift of exchange, to gift people an experience in real time of psychological safety, of community, to do this work of meaning and significance. It's no longer conceptual, abstract. I'm teaching now in a way that it's a lived experience. And I think on day 3, you by now have sensed this possibility. You have sensed this possibility and the enlivening of the ability, which is having the capacity to go in and do the work of truly humanizing organizations. First of all, leading well from within, finding your ability to lead well inside yourself so that you could lead well in the world and actually do the work of healing. There's a vast need for healing right now in the world. When you think about psychological safety, community, I'm thinking about all the work you did this morning on inclusion and diversity. It was this work. It touched into this work, no doubt. How do you create psychological safety? How do you create love and belonging? How do you actually kind of co-create into an enlivened future of racial equity? What's that work? It really applies. So I feel so blessed to be able to serve, not only be served by this gift that I've been given through Exchange, but now to be able to come and serve deeply in my life's purpose work at this moment in time, to serve Exchange, to elevate the possibility of what Exchange can do. It's just an incredible, a very humbling and life-giving blessing, you know, to be going through what I'm going through right now, you know, with you. And I, you know, in 2 weeks, I consider, I don't know how much time I have left. I feel that program, that 3-day program in 2 weeks from now, it's possible that might be my last program. Maybe not, maybe not. But it's deeply purposeful to me because we will also record the sessions, and you know, and that will become an enduring legacy, you know, of what I feel blessed to leave in the world.
Danny, this was really, really wonderful. This was absolutely wonderful. Not just because we filled in the blanks. Wow. Hey, how many of you, as Danny shared just the tip of the iceberg of his teaching, how many of you had some dots connected around what's really going on when we design and facilitate these conversations? I love that, Chris. Yeah. Yeah. I was in bonus time after yesterday, but now I'm in double bonus time after this morning. Danny, so wonderful to have you bring both your heart, and as Dr. Mary taught us, we need the head too. We need it all.
Yeah.
In the way that you brought your heart, and it's backed by science. That's so important. If any of us want to carry anything forward, you know, sometimes we're trying to enroll others in work that they can't quite see or believe what's really going on or why it really works. And you brought it all. You brought it all. And this deep dive coming up, for all of you who are attending, as you heard Danny share, it'll be recorded, as everything we do is. But this one is extra special because even before last week, we already had visions of this being a gift we were going to give back to Danny for him giving to our inner circle. By the way, for those of you in our inner circle who've been going through over the last months our own private version of the deep dive, drop a note in the chat. What's that been like to you? And I'm not saying this right now because I think it's difficult to convince all of you to come to the deep dive. I think they were sold about 30 minutes ago. There's actually another piece to this that I just want to share. And there's not an answer here, but there's a question. And Danny, if I may, I just want everyone to know that, you know, there's a question that you and I are exploring right now. And I want to share with all of you that I don't have an answer. I don't know if you do either, Danny. But the opportunity on the other side of this question may very well be an opportunity that's available to any of you who are able to make it to the deep dive. And you know, the question that Danny and I have been exploring even before last week, but it just got a little more interesting, is how might exchange, and let me change that, how might you, I'm talking to the 38 of you, the 39 of you, how might you become enabled, empowered to be trained, certified, licensed? The labels are probably not that important, for all of us to be able to take Dr. Danny's deep dive and bring it out to the world. Who likes that question right there? And if you're curious, I'll tell you this. The deep dive is already packaged so tightly that literally the questions, the conversations, every step of what Danny by himself has brought to clients, it's all right there on a tee.
Yeah.
Potentially for us at Exchange to carry forward. So I just want all of you to know that's a question and potentially a possibility, maybe an inevitability. And Danny, if there's anything you want to say to that.
Well, yeah, John, there was one caveat, and that is I had, I've got all these tumors in my head, and I had severe word block. So I don't know between now and then what my capacity for communication will be. I do know this. I had a miracle in the hospital because I went in with word block. And the miracle is that I had a seizure on the second day. And the seizure's like electroshock therapy. And what the seizure actually did was it discharged my word block. So it's a miracle I can speak fluently right now. So I feel blessed. Now, that said, we have an extraordinary inner circle. We have an extraordinary inner circle. And so what John is conveying over here is, regardless of whether or not I'm good to go, this deep dive will happen, and you will be in phenomenal hands between the combination. And John and Dan knows my work very well. We do a lot of our physician well-being programs together, and the entire inner circle will be, if I can lead it, that's what my highest intention is. I would like to lead it. And if anything changes I'm going to be present in whatever circumstances I can be present, and you're in great hands. This work is packaged, and it's packaged in a way, I just want to say it's packaged in a way that's been deeply influenced by Exchange. So you couldn't be any better hands, if anything was to happen to me, where John would lead this.
The field will lead it one way or another. Oh, Dr. Danny, thank you for this gift today. On so many levels, in so many ways, I deeply personally appreciate being with you right now. And the way that your work has already influenced our community, and the way that today you modeled and then revealed for all of us what conscious leadership looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And the way that your work will continue to elevate in partnership with us what we do at Exchange. Words can't describe it. I want to ask all of you to close with the simplest of closings, which is a simple active learning cycle. What's the one thing that's been most valuable for you over the last 60 minutes with Dr. Danny? What's been the one thing that has been most valuable for you? Go ahead. I'm going to give you just 20, 30 seconds. Then you're going to go into groups of 3. You'll be in those groups of 3 for just about 3 minutes. I know you could take more than 3 minutes, couldn't you? So you've got about 60 seconds. I'm sorry, 20, 30 seconds. What's been the single most important gift that Dr. Danny brought to you today? Most important gift that Dr. Danny brought to you today? Most important gift. Jana or Nick, whenever you're ready, give everyone a blue box. You're going to be divinely brought in by the Zoom field with maybe 2 or 3 others. You'll be in there for 3 minutes, rapid round of shares, and then we'll bring you right back. For those of you watching at home, what's been the greatest gift that you got from this session with Dr. Danny? Enjoy. All right, everybody. Anybody make any friends? Hey, just to close this out, maybe 2 or 3 of you would like to share greatest gift that you got from our session with Dr. Danny. And help me, please. If you can do digital blue hands, you can do digital and physical. If you really want to get called on, jump up and down and wave and just don't stop until I that's your name. I saw Jan and I saw Dr. Phil, and then we'll have 1 or 2 others. Jan, coming to you. Go right
I'm going to
ahead.
paint my hands blue for the after lunch, since I don't seem to get to the reaction fast enough. Dr. Daniel, I just love you more than you know. It's not your cancer. It's not yours. I don't know. That's just in me. The takeaway for me is when we go to lunch, I'm going to a funeral, and the funeral is that I'm going to bury my what's died inside of me just in the last breakout session. And what's died is my habitual comparing myself to others, to feeling not enough. I can really say goodbye to her and kiss her, and I can hear the dirt on the coffin, and I'm just ready to say goodbye. And I realize that the people that I've been feeling competitive with sometimes in these sessions are my soulmates. And that I hear people saying things that I would say only validates that I'm in the right place. And when I first met you, John, I said that this is my tribe, and it's so my tribe. And I just thank each and every one of you for the waterworks. I wrote that, Dr. Daniel, you've baptized me with tears of joy and love. So here they are. I don't cry much anymore. So there we are.
Jan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mary, coming over to you. Go right ahead.
I just want to say, I can't see Danny. Where's Danny? On my screen. Never mind. I just want to say, Danny, thank you. That was the most incredible experience that I've never seen before. And I don't know that I'll ever see again, because what we just witnessed was the tearing down the walls that separate life from eternity. When you said, I'm excited about merging into this loving, energetic field, you showed us that there's no such thing as a difference between now and eternity. And I have never seen that in 40 years in this business. And you gave such a gift to all of us to feel it and to experience it in the here and now. This was incredible, Danny. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil, thank you so much. Chris, coming your way. Chris, go right ahead.
Thanks, John. Dr. Danny, yeah, just to piggyback and reiterate what Phil just said, this was a mind-blowing and heart-blowing, phenomenal share that you've blessed us with today. Mine's more of a question, so I kind of realized after I put my hand up that I'm sort of torn, but I don't know. Is it time for a question, John?
I would ask Chris that we get the question to Danny and give him space to answer it, but my request would be not at this moment, if that's okay.
Sure thing. Okay, yeah, so Danny, however may be possible to go further with you on this question. As Phil said, the moment where you described the thing inside you dying was the fear of death, and you weren't afraid of it because you feel that you're, as we all are, on a path to merge with this infinite loving field. My deepest inquiry, and the thing I haven't been able to understand, is like, why is it that we feel the field as infinite love? Why is the field experienced by us as love? Is love at the base fabric level of reality, the universe, human consciousness? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to get to the bottom.
I will give you a quick answer, and that is yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, 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 and yes.
All right.
That's how I'm
To
experiencing.
have that from such a you know, a powerful scientific mind, that's the unfathomable thing for me, is what is love? Thank you.
Well, in the mystical traditions and in science, first of all, in the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine, we have a value: love is the greatest healer of all. Love is the greatest healer of all. And it's woven into the field. And all we have to do is make ourselves available to it. We don't have to do any effort. All you have to do is just let that love into your life. That is abundant, infinitely abundant in the field.
I'm grateful at this moment that Chris and Danny ignored my attempt to squash a question. The field clearly knew that the better pathway was for the question and the answer to emerge. How many of you saw the beauty of that? So Chris, thank you to your higher wisdom.
Love always wins.
That's so great. That's so great. Oh, it's good. The higher plan will always prevail. Even a facilitator can't get in the way of it. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Danny. Tom, and then Anna, last one. Tom, go right ahead, and then Anna. Tom, go right ahead.
Thank you. Joseph Campbell was mentioned earlier, and I've read his stuff where he talks about you get a chance to see something so awe-inspiring a few times in your life. And Paul, Meenal, and myself went into the breakout room, and no words were spoken the whole time. We just connected our hearts, and both, I guess, grieved and reveled in the awe of what we just witnessed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Anna?
Danny, thank you for the permission that you gave to breathe and to receive, and the permission to stop arguing with the universe about the crises that came into my life from the perspective of why me? What did I do wrong? How come so much? Permission to stop and say thank you, and to accept that my life is a gift. And this is the time to step into it, to not just do work for others, but allow the work I do to be something that I too get to cherish.
Anna, if I could add, first of all, I so treasure you. We've met a number of times in the community, and you're a light. You are a light in the community, and you know, and I'm learning with you right now the power of questions. You know, this transformational power of questions. When John mentions that words and questions create worlds, it's that power that, just remember, the brain is predisposed towards safety. So we have a gravitational pull to asking, why me, why now, sucking us down. What we are developing is the skill for elevation. We are developing the skill for elevation to ask alternative questions. And so the power, the fulcrum of the question, instead of why me, what matters most now? that is a life-giving transformation of the question. And I also love being in the community because this wiring is so deeply embedded in us, we forget. And so we have a community over here that can remind us. I'm reminding you of what you already know. I'm not sharing anything at all that you don't know. And we function in community to be there for each other as a community of reminders of the possibility for elevation.
Anna, Danny, thank you. I'm going to unmute. You're all welcome to express appreciation for Danny as we close this out. Go right ahead, everybody. There you go.
Thank you, Dr.
Danny.
Danny.
Thank you so
Love
much.
you so much.
Danny, we love you.
Much
That was
love.
amazing. Oh my
Mm.
goodness.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Lovely
You're a gift.
address.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank
Love
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
Love you, Danny.
love each one of you, and just wish you joys of the days ahead. And for all of you coming, I will be blessed by your presence, or when we meet again. So, bye.
Thank you, Danny.